some interesting, got some interesting cases back there. I love a case.
It's a cigar shop, so it works in my favor.
Maybe I need to move across the street and go to my cigar shop.
There we go.
You know, I'm noticing an interesting dynamic that happened in webinars post-COVID. Like pre-COVID, we would have like an attendee list like hundreds long. And then about 20% of them would go and show up and watch on YouTube or Wistia or watch via the share link after. After COVID, we get this huge sign up list, and then like 20% show up for the live, and then 80% like our views on the recorded session just blow up. So it's completely flipped.
Yeah.
And
well, that makes sense. I mean, think about the reasoning behind it. We have an on-demand lifestyle, right? We always have. Just before COVID, things were more restricted to physical workloads, being in office and whatnot. So you had to register and allocate that time around it. And people weren't even using YouTube as much. They were having webinars that were saved in their back repository somewhere on SharePoint or something. You know, whereas now the consumer, which is the audience, is watching us on YouTube anyway, so they know they can come to your channel anytime and watch whatever you put. So it's a culture change shift, and it's due to training since COVID even, you know.
And one of the things I want to change, and it's part of the topic today as we get started here, is changing the dynamic to be more engaging and more conversational in our with everyone. So just to kick us off here, my name is Adam Walter. I am with Humanize It, a startup here in Lincoln, Nebraska, where we are taking a tool and we're trying to help IT people have better conversations with their clients. Skip Ziegler, my partner in crime over here, and he'll be managing the chat today. And then Sean, I don't know who he is, but he's at a cigar shop, so he must be interesting. So Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm growing my beard out more so I can be the world's most interesting man, or at least pretend to be, because that's like my idol, you know? So Sean Lordo,
interesting someday. It's okay.
I lie to my children on a regular basis. They think I'm interesting because I lie. Well, the 20-year-olds don't think it anymore. The 13-year-old, she still thinks I'm interesting. The other ones are just like, Dad, please leave me alone. So Sean Lordo, I'm the economy evangelist here for ConnectWise. Huge background in passion with MSPs, technology, sales, marketing, growth, relationship building, solution providing. The end.
And he likes unicorns, as we've established.
I love unicorns, let's be honest.
You know, and that is a segue into what I kind of want to talk about first, is like with unicorns, and is kind of an inside joke here at Humanize It, because we talk about unicorns being employees who are able to talk business and technology fluently. And they tend not to exist unless you get one of those late 90s, early 2000s technology people who had to wear every hat known to man. You know, they were the manager, they were the desktop support, they were the server admin, they were the network admin, and then they had to walk into a board meeting and explain what they do. And over a long, painful period of the early 2000s, they became really good, or they just burned out and went and shacked up in the mountains somewhere.
I like the latter a little bit more right now. The mountain shacking up, you know, that sounds, I mean, there you go, like that right there. I could hang out there all day.
So, you know, when it comes to the unicorn, we try to hire them in our companies, but they're stupid expensive because these are people with 20 years of experience under their belt, and they might have an MBA and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science or an MIS or something. And so you're spending, you know, $120,000, $200,000 on these people, and are they worth it? And is there a better way? And the answer is yes, there is a better way. Yes, they are worth it. So it's yes and yes. But
absolutely,
people need to understand what the difference is between the approaches in technology. And so I wanted to kick us off by saying, what's the difference between bottom up and top down? And I usually give an example, and Sean, you come with your own example here, but a bottom up approach is the way I used to deal with IT. When I was an engineer, it was a bottom up. I walked into an environment, I knew exactly what needed to be done. I had to design a network to allow gigabit speeds. I needed to get these PCs I need to have these devices on wireless. I need to have these things done so they can print. And then these mobile devices need to be managed remotely. I knew everything I needed. I just need to start putting the pieces together, and then I need somebody to approve the project so I knew how much to spend. Like, hey, if I need less spend, more spend, and that was the bottom-up approach. I knew everything I need to do. And the only reason I was able to do that is because the context had already been defined for me. I had to create a network. And so the bottom-up approach is great because you're starting with the endpoint and you're building this nice foundation and this beautiful network that everybody's going to work on. It's going to be for everybody's needs. A top-down approach says, I don't even know if I need to build a network. Let me go to the business owner and say, hey, key stakeholder, what do you want to accomplish with your business this year?
Yep.
Oh, we want to grow our sales by 15%. That's our business goal. What does that have to do with IT? Well, what's holding you back from getting that 15% growth? Well, it takes forever to get contracts around, so we're going to try to find some new way to mail out contracts so they're more dynamic, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, why don't you do an electronic version? And then you can start solving that problem. Now you're focused on a business problem that you can solve with technology because you're a technology specialist. And that's the top-down approach. I look for a business problem, and I look to solve it. A bottom-up says I'm looking for a technology problem, and I'm looking to solve it.
Correct. And I'll go on record in saying that neither approach is wrong. Neither approach is 100% correct, because you have the stakeholders of all levels, right? Even when you go bottom, and we'll translate this over to sales and to sales itself, because they're very relatable. And when you talk about sales, you've heard about account-based marketing. What about account-based sales, where you start talking about the stakeholders at the very first level, moving their way up? What I mean by that is, usually, especially in small businesses, the owner of the business will say to their assistant or whoever it may be, I need you to source whatever this need is out that we have. Go find companies that provide this.
Yes.
The end, right? And they give them here's a few pieces of criteria we need, whether local company does X and has this, whatever, right? And that usually starts the ball rolling for that. Or you have, if in a larger company, you have a manager that needs to do something for their particular division or their team, that they say, we're struggling with this. They have the use case right in front of them, say, we need to do these things. So what do we, and they still, they still hire maybe one of their people to help them source it and vet it. And the conversation starts, in that case, at the bottom level at that point, or with the champion or the direct user, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So if you go bottom up, which you can't control where some relationships begin. You just have to be able to take full advantage of where the relationship begins and where it gets to, right? And so you should always make it a point from bottom up to start asking. And, I focus on BANT, as we know, is a big thing. BANT is an acronym: budget, authority, needs, and timing, right? So if I have the conversation with you and you're not you're not the one that actually makes the decision, but you're the influencer and you're the guy sourcing, I'm going to say, Adam, so, you tell me I don't know the budget, Sean. Oh, okay. Then I say, okay, the authority. I'm just part of the stakeholders. I'm not the decision maker. Now I already know, well, who is it? So now you can start to get this working BANT, B-A-N-T, no F. So BANT is budget, authority, needs, and timing. So you want to know what their budget looks like, if they even have one. You want to know who the authority is, are they in charge? Are they one of the stakeholders? And get an idea of who the people are. And then the need, what is it there? What are their pain points? What do they need? And the timing, how soon do they need this? Yep. Because you need to be realistic about it. But, if you get that all answered from the very first discovery, if you're going to go, middle, up, down, bottom, up, top, down, you start learning this right away. So there is no wrong way about it, as long as you take full advantage of the situation, of that relationship.
Yeah, and I kind of think of it as contextual.
Yep.
It's kind of like in leadership. Everybody in your company needs to know what your goal is this year. Not that they're gonna question it every step of the way, but they need to be aware. Like when they're installing this PC, maybe the goal of your MSP this year is to increase customer satisfaction. So when they go on site and they're installing this PC, maybe your technician takes an extra 5 minutes to ask about the person's day. you know, just the little things. But now everybody's working together. They're trying to figure out ways to help the goal move forward. And so
Yep.
when you take that top-down discovery, especially in your QBRs, which we'll talk about here in a bit, you start adding a context to everything you do. The bottom-up says, hey, I'm working in context here. I'm creating a network. I don't have time to think about budget strategy and everything while I'm building a network. I need to be focused on this stuff. And that's efficient, but you have a context you're working with it. So you have to work the both together.
Yep.
And so what I want to, one of my questions for Sean here was like, why do so many MSPs focus on the bottom up approach? I see this over and over and over again. I watch an MSP break themselves trying to be more efficient operationally while never asking the question, why are they doing something for a client?
Sure. Now, I mean, there's various reasons, right? One is there's a comfort level, right? A lot of MSPs became MSP owners because they were really good at solving problems in technology, right? A lot of them weren't, self-admittedly, they will tell you they're not the best business people. They're not the best salespeople at times. Now, the ones that are, you can see they excel above and beyond. So it comes down to a comfort level of being able to solve the immediate ask. Also, they don't always get into, well, let's go back. And before they were an MSP, they were a break fix company a lot of times. And as a break fix, it's basically you're calling saying, hey, something isn't working, and it's a reactionary transaction. Similar to if your car breaks down or your plumbing goes wrong, you call it, that's a reactional transaction. That is not a premeditated, planned out service offering at all. So a lot of them started with break fixes because due to the nature of the business at the time, there really wasn't a defined managed service approach 15 years ago. I mean, there was, we didn't know what we called it back then. 15, 20 years ago, it was just IT people basically. So the conversation is very simple. If somebody calls me, and a lot of MSPs self-admittedly don't like to sell or market or anything else, they prefer to just to go and solve the problem, and move on. That's so, there is no full-blown business assessment. Some cases now, if you notice the last 5 years, there's been a very big push for, upfront assessments.
Yes.
We've seen a lot of programs and technologies be launched because of this, and a lot of best practices discussed about it. So they've really gotten into it a lot more. And then even, it will come back to what you guys even do as well as an organization, not to shamefully plug you, but, BDR concepts are so big because of this also, because there's an initial assessment, and then there should be an ongoing business assessment that happens. I don't care how often, it should be often enough, but it should be a standardization for it. But, I think they find comfort in that first level person they're talking to, because usually they're similar people.
Yeah. How often does the business strategy change with your client? The smaller the client, the less the business strategy changes.
Yep. And
so, the larger the client, ironically, the bit less the business strategy changes. And
well, it's a bigger ship.
Yeah, bigger ship turns slower. But you can't afford to meet with a small client every week to discuss where they're going to be at this week. So they tend to be a little bit more break fix.
Absolutely.
Which is where a QBR comes in. It's kind of like that happy medium. If you've got a client and you need to meet and adapt to their goals, a QBR allows you to do that. You set one session where you discover where is their business objectives this year, and then you have quarterly saying, are we still aligned, and are we accomplishing what you needed to be accomplished from a business perspective?
But that's a good point. Before you even go any further than that, the first thing you said was their goals. People don't really ask what their real goals are, aside from back to the difference between a break fix client and a managed service client. Break fix client is the goal is to fix my computer, it's not running. MSP, it's a managed service. Goal should be the business as a whole of the business. What are you looking for growth? Between they may not share their revenue with you, but are you looking to grow more people? Are you looking to grow enough in revenue to hire more people? Are you trying to eliminate people? Are you trying to automate? Because back to what MSP should be doing is automation. A lot of things automated, right? So I think that's probably something that should be addressed. That we should talk about this at some point, not today, but the overall experience of how do you become a trusted advisor to your clients, to where you're talking about the actual business goals.
Yeah, and this is all part of the top-down strategy, because a lot of you think you're doing top-down strategy and you're not.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about this all the time in our community updates, where we say, hey, if you're asking the question, when does this PC need to be replaced, and you're calling it strategy because you're thinking 3 years out, you're still in operations. There's still operational efficiency. It's still a bottom context item. It's important, and it's really good to do that tactical foresight to see what needs to be done so you're ahead of the problem. But your business meeting should be focused on, can you tell me what your biggest client does, what their goal is? Look at your list right now of clients and take your top 5 clients. Can you go down that list and say, what is their biggest goal this year? What are they trying to do? Do they have big competitors? Do they have things? You can do all this stuff without being in a meeting with them. You can run a Porter's 5 Forces analysis on them and just ask, who are their competitors? What is their vertical? Where are they at? How long have they been in business? Hire somebody to go out and do all this for every one of your clients so you understand the context they're working in. Because right now, if you can't answer those things about your top 5 clients, do you really know what they need? And I've watched MSPs, the light bulb go off, where all of a sudden they're like, I asked them about their business strategy this week, and I sold $10,000 in projects. That has almost become a catchphrase with people once they start delivering proper QBRs. Your project revenue will immediately go up because now you're selling, of the 100 projects you could sell this client, you're selling them the 2 to 3% that are going to grow their business, and they're all about throwing cash at that.
Absolutely.
Even a small business, if you say, hey, if you do this thing, your contract's going to turn around immediately. Why don't you use FormSwift? Why don't you use LegalZoom to get your contracts done so that you can get an immediate signature back? And if you need to do a revision, you can do it right now with your attorney online, and you can turn around that contract in an hour. Salesperson's on site. Let's get this revised. Let's get it in place. And then away we go. And so you can solve it from a technology standpoint, or you can sell them more PCs, which is an uphill battle because their sales are down and their salesperson's on site trying to make more sales to buy more PCs. And they can't because there's a technology problem in the way that you could solve, but you don't know about because you didn't ask the question.
Absolutely. Well, okay. So back this rant anyway, let's be honest,
one of many,
right? So, okay. So let's talk about that, right? When you're doing we all talk about being the IT partner, but let's put the word business in there somewhere, right? Business IT partner, IT business partner. I don't care which way you do it, but the fact is it starts to set a precedent that you should be talking about the business to become the advisor amongst this and how to grow their business effectively and efficiently, because that is your job, right? Is to, if you were the internal IT director, what would you be doing during conversations, which you'd have like your ELT conversations, right? And during your ELT, they would discuss, hey, we're projected to do 20% growth this year. So in order to support that, we're going to need to hire 50 people or whatever, right? And so the IT person, what did IT director do right away? They look at exactly how many PCs, how many phones, how many anything, right? Whatever it is that it takes to do the job, that's what they start doing. And they start saying immediately, we have to start sourcing. And then they start developing, again, back to a band. They start talking about their budget. They're talking to the authority figures in the room, but what's the need? We know it's 50 people. We know the 50 people need X. And then what's the time frame? And there's a plan. There's a projected rollout plan too. And if you think about it as an MSP, you have that conversation, you can talk about not just one thing in particular. You should be talking about everything needed to support that mission of that. Think of us right now. We're on a call on a Zoom. We're on Zoom right now. I'm using an Airbud right now. I'm using a Plantronic headpiece, right? I'm using Wi-Fi from somebody right now at a physical place. So just those few things alone. Not to mention the layers of security that are involved in software that are on our laptops that are protecting us from the moment. Not to mention you're using a YouTube channel. Look at all those things that are involved in just this phone call or this video alone. Now imagine, how do you take this and translate it over to a full business conversation? And how do you also monetize it too? Because you can monetize from several things I mentioned just now, just from this one call alone, from your own services plus whatever you resell from other companies.
Yeah, and I do emphasize that a lot. So there's a comment here in the thread: too much emphasis on technology as the solution will fall short if people and processes are ignored.
Agreed.
You gotta know the context you're working. That's why I call it context. You gotta know the context of your client so that your technology can align with it. I have made a lot more money selling just this, little solutions off to the side. Like just today, I was helping a small business off to the side because they didn't understand how to redirect their DNS so they could do a blog to increase their SEO. And they knew it was something they needed to do. But then in the meantime, they called, I got on a Zoom session with them. They're a friend of mine. And so we talked it through. And in that conversation, we were able to talk a lot more about how things like HubSpot work, how DNS works, and why it's important to have, your name server set up appropriately. All things that she didn't care about, but I gave her the steps she needed to reach out to support and do this. Now, why isn't a technology professional helping her with this? Because she doesn't know the questions to ask. I gave her the context to work within so she could get help from her technical support. We discussed this.
But doesn't context come from the right discovery of everything, right? To understand what the business looks like and the growth goals. Don't worry, Adam, I'll cover it for you while you're doing something else. So in the meantime, I think it starts with having the ability to ask the right questions to understand what they're trying to get to. So back to what we said before, the goals. Contextually speaking, once you talk about use cases instead of technology needs, because again, my good friend is a mechanic. If he and I had a conversation about technology, he would not know what to ask me. We had a conversation about certain engines and certain pieces of cars. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude.
Yeah.
So contextually speaking, it's, hey, what do you want? Like, and actually my buddy that is the mechanic years ago, he said, I'm having troubles financially. And I was like, you have a good business. I was like, how are you not making money? And he goes, no, I just can't track it. So I was like, there's a difference. So talk about context. You're having problems financially. I'm thinking you're going broke. He's just saying he can't track it properly. So we went and got QuickBooks for him, right? So, I talked about what he's trying to do. We got QuickBooks, we installed, we set it up, and this was years ago, and he's been fine since then, right? But again, back to context. Had I started with the original, you're in trouble financially, that means I'm pulling money out of my wallet, like, here, can I help you feed the kid? Whereas, no, he needs to figure out how to actually track his finances and his bills for P&L.
Yeah. A great context there is, I just bought a Tesla. Yay, me.
Yay.
I am not a car guy. I am not the target audience for this stuff. I am buy a used car, run it into the ground. I don't care what it is. I don't get into the big wars of Dodge versus Ford. I don't care. Does it run? Does it do what I want?
But now you're a Tesla driver. Now you're the elite.
And now I'm a Tesla driver. Why did I get talked into buying a $70,000 vehicle? Because I buy cheap things when it comes to cars. And it just sickened me to spend this much money. But there was a lifestyle shift that came with the Tesla. And there was a cost savings I'm getting every month because I run carpool with my kids. And I'm trying to squeeze in those last couple of years with my teens and stuff. And I have a whole video on why I chose to drive a truck. And now I probably need to create a new video on why I chose to drive a Tesla. I am not a car guy. I cannot tell you the details on how this stuff works. What I do know is I'm saving $400 to $500 a month on gas. And I can use this Tesla to get where I need to go and have a little fun with it because it is fun to drive. But it solves a problem for me. So I was willing to spend double the amount on a vehicle because it solved a problem for me. And if you can do the same context for your clients, they're going to be spending double with you. And this is something MSPs need to understand. Like, don't sell the PC, sell the solution. And that's your top-down approach. So when I go in and I talk to a nonprofit or a small business, medium business about what am I selling them? I don't talk about the FortiGate 500 or whatever the latest release is. I say, I'm going to allow your people to work from anywhere in the United States seamlessly. What's it going to cost? It's going to cost about $20,000 to get the whole solution in place. If you want to see the itemized bill, here it is. But what it's going to allow you to do is work from anywhere. It's going to make these contracts flow really fast. And you're going to be able to stay in communication and hire across borders because we know that there's a hiring shortage in your area. And so now you can hire in Ohio, Florida, wherever, where the jobs are, and you can get more personnel. So we have solved many problems for you. I did not sell a firewall there. I sold a solution because I understood what this business was struggling with.
Well, look what you just covered in one conversation in just 2 lines. You also covered a real world issue of hiring being a struggle here. So let's transfer it over state lines. Plus, hey, what if you took a hit last year as a business and you can't pay people at the level? Let's say you're in Manhattan which we know is a very expensive area. But you can run a business from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it's going to be far greater, as far as cost is concerned. You save in labor. Why not have the ability to do that? But again, how would I know? I wouldn't know I could do that unless I talk to my MSP or my IT person, whoever it may be, and say, hey, how do we solve the problem of the wage gap, like the issues? We can't afford this, but we need to still stay in business, stay moving. What do we do? Now, if you're back to a business acumen is crucial. I think the one thing that a lot of MSPs don't do is they don't put themselves, they don't put it in their own shoes. You know what I mean? They don't realize, like, how did they do it? Because that's what your clients need. How do you run your business? You probably stay as agile as you can, right? You probably try to automate as many things as you can so you don't have to pay for extra people for no reason, so you can have skill set players. I learned a long time ago, you have to have aces in their places. One thing I know is not considered an ace in a place is when you're bloated on admin people just because you haven't automated things. That's a waste of your time and labor, right? So why have it? Remember back in the day, I worked for a large company and the marketing staff was like 150 people. And I was like, oh my God, that's a huge marketing staff. 85% of them were admins. They were counting the emails. They were counting the clicks. This is before automation really worked within like market automation as well as it does. And people didn't know how to really implement it. But it was like all these people just basically counting things. And that was 85% of them, making sure they were able to count and administer the tasks. They were still manual before it was being automated with like email campaigns, for instance. Make sure you go into and send out your email once a week to educate everybody on your did you know.
I don't know if you know the story. It's all about the night watchman. Are you familiar with that short story?
Mm-mm.
Night watchman, and there's a garbage heap or a junk pile, and people keep stealing things from the junk pile, so they hire a night watchman to make sure that that garbage pile is watched or the junk pile is guarded. And then they realize that there's no one there to tell and manage the night watchman's shift. So they hire a manager to watch the timesheets and make sure there's a budget for it, make sure he's clocking in and clocking out and doing his job. And they realized that the manager needed an assistant to help manage the emails that were coming in from between the manager and the night watchman. And it keeps going, it keeps building the administration, right? And they need an accountant to make sure that everybody's spending correctly and holding everybody up on board. And eventually the accountant discovers that they're over on budget, and so they decide to let the night watchman go. And so it's a very famous story in business theory of the night watchman. And so we end up losing so much focus that we end up so caught up in KPIs, so caught up in the administration of business, we forget why we're there. And I think that's what MSPs are doing today, is that they're so focused on delivering PCs and servers and switches and having this excellent automated schedule that they've taken the people out of the business.
I agree. Well, again, it comes back to anytime you have a conversation with a new prospect, you should understand, you can use BANTS or if you have something else, but no matter what, those questions need answered. And what that should do is give you, if done right, and you're talking to the right people. If you're talking to the wrong people first, at least you find out who the right people are, and you help enable that person you're talking to that day. If they fall in love with you and they become your champion, they can help you move upstream to the stakeholders that are in charge, and they become your representative, so to speak, right? Get you in the boardroom, have a real conversation, do the BANTS. What's that?
One of the moments where you're winning. So everybody watching this on the recording and live, you're winning when you can get your key stakeholder to say, you know what, I don't know. We should probably ask Bob. Who's Bob?
Agreed.
Bob's the controller, or Alice the controller, or the CEO.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know the answer to that question. We should probably ask, because in their company, they're having their own struggles with corporate culture. And so if they don't know the answer to these business questions you're asking, they're going to bring in somebody at the next level. And
Absolutely.
that person will be like, oh, this is a really interesting conversation. Make sure you invite me back next time, because I really want to be in these, because you're automating, you're helping us improve our company. And now you're at the table. Now you're in front of the board. Maybe the CEO goes, I really want you to present this solution to the board. It's a big ask, but I've got your back. I will back you on this. We'll stand in front of the board. We'll say, hey, it's a $300,000 project, but it's going to do this for the company. I really want to do this, but the board has to approve the spend, and I think you've got a great way to put it. And that's how you get in front of boards. That's how you get big projects. And it's because you're asking business questions that you would ask yourself.
Yep. Agreed. Well, and let's take that path, right?
Sean's
Let's say
got
that
his
you
hand
do.
up.
Me? Did I put my hand up? Yes, I put my hand up. I'm gonna lower my hand now.
I'm talking too much.
Yeah, shut up, Adam. Quit talking. God, this is embarrassing. I can never get a word in edgewise. Anyway.
I'm gonna start using a hand when Skip and I talk.
It's a good idea. You're welcome. See, so I
need
so
the
let's
other
talk.
hand. I don't know if they have that in Zoom though. It's only got one finger though.
Well, mine's more actually. When I raise my hand, I feel like I'm doing like actually stop. I'm not really raising my hand. I'm like, stop it. You've said enough. You know, talk to the hand kind of thing. But let's talk about that though. Let's say you do present you go into and you talk about a project, and let's say it's a $300,000 project, right? They should be able to recognize several things from this. One is, how is it going to make them more operationally effective, right? And with that being said, how much are they going to save in mundane costs that they already have that they don't need to have? Or and last but not least, how is it going to make them more productive to generate more revenue or production, whatever it may be? And if you can answer those questions, the $300,000 project makes sense then, right? Because they can say, we spend $300,000 now and we make $1 million, you won, as far as I'm concerned, right? Now, relatively speaking, of course, based off what their goals are. But the fact of the matter is, you show a benefit, you show a profit. Back to your car, you bought that car. You said about $400 or $500 a month in gas. You're saving approximately what, like $5-6 grand a year in fuel. I mean, you can actually do the math and calculate when you broke even almost on what if you would have paid for a lesser vehicle even or something, right? Easily, you can look and see where you actually broke even on total cost of the car and where you're in the black.
Yep.
Same rules apply to this. Now let's go to the other side. Let's say they say, we don't see enough value yet because we don't believe in you that you can do this yet. We like you. We think you're pretty good, but can you really take on the burden of whatever this whole project is? There is such thing as a land and expand. You know, you may have to take a lesser contract from them to establish some sort of value and show how efficient you are, because there's a difference between handing them a decent size like contract, and it might be even the best price of, they may have vetted you between 3 other companies. Maybe you're the best cost.
I tell people, and it's a good catchphrase for, if you take one thing away from this big conversation here, people, if you make your clients money, they will give you money.
Absolutely. Always. And they're more than happy to.
And
they're more than happy to.
It goes for nonprofits as well as for profits. And my case study that I give all of our members and people who kind of come to our table and talk about this with is that we took a nonprofit from spending $1,500 a month to $9,000 a month because we understood what their struggles were. Then we took the time to learn how they fund things, and we put it into a context that they could afford. And so once we did that, it became a no-brainer for them, and it turned out really well. And if an MSP could have had that conversation years before, like, so that's an extra $6,000-7,000 a month of spend there, people. So do your math over 10 years.
They should.
How much money did you lose because you did not put things in a business context?
Yep.
And so you
agreed.
Start changing your conversations. Well,
it's back to being holistic. It's back to being more holistic in your approach. By holistic in your approach has to be, again, let's start with nuts and bolts. Business. I'm a businessman. You're a businessman. Let's talk about business first. You're no different just because you're an IT person and I own a car dealership. We still have the same P&Ls at the end of the day. Fact, same P&Ls. We still have a lot of the same needs between technology needs at this point. You know, you have computers, I have computers. Oh, it's laptop, I have laptops too. Oh, you have phones, I have phones. That's weird. Oh, you have a website, I have a website.
You have customers, I've got customers.
It's crazy, right? How much the same we are, and yet we're not. You know, the difference is I wear a suit because I own a car dealership and I have to wear a suit, and you're wearing a polo shirt and cut off jean shorts because why not? Because you're an IT guy.
This is
amazing.
This old movie, Nicolas Cage, Family Man, I think it's called.
Oh yeah.
He's out of his context, but he's selling car tires. And he goes and he pitches himself to this massive corporation. He goes, I know that your revenues are so high that you spend more in pencils than we do in profits every year, but it's still about people. So when it comes to talking to your clients, it's about the people, it's about the business. You have a lot in common, but as Skip and I talk about it, we say they're experts in their context. They are really, really good with selling cars. This person is a master at it, but they have a weakness. They don't know the technology side. They don't know how to create a website. They don't know how to do all the things that you know. You know a million things about technology. They know a million things about running a car dealership. If both of you sat in a room together and acknowledge that you're an expert in technology and he's an expert in car sales, you can come up with some solutions that will rock the foundations of the marketplace. And when I watched that happen in the early 2000s when car dealerships were some of the first ones to adopt web pages that you could see inventory on. That was crazy. So a technology person and a car dealer got together and said, hey, there's this new thing called the internet, www. We should start listing your cars there so people want to come to your lot first. They know that you have the cars they want right here, right now. Then you can negotiate with them on price. And so when you get these two people in the room together, amazing things happen. But if you're the expert on everything and they're the expert on everything, you'll never talk. And so having that business conversation at the top saying, what are you trying to accomplish this year? Hey, did you know there's this new thing coming out that's really cool that might help your business? And then let them say, you know, that does make sense. Let's talk a little bit more about that. And
I couldn't agree more. That's actually a good, I forgot about that movie. That's an awesome movie. I mean, contextually speaking though, think about what he was. The whole concept of it was he was finding the other side of him with the life he could have lived, right? So in his regular day-to-day life, he was a high-end corporate mongrel, made everybody work on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and was was a single man, and he was like living this life of like of solitude. But he would do multi-billion dollar deals. All of a sudden, he gets to see a glimpse of what his other life was like could have been, and he's selling freaking tires. But it didn't matter. It was still the same conversation. That's the point. Like when he went to sell, it was still the same conversation. It was about what's the value, what's the need. The value and need is really, again, I only look for something if I need to accomplish something. Yeah. Okay, and I'm not looking for, and I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but if I went to go build a house today, I wouldn't know what to start with. I would hire an architect. I would hire a construction worker. I would hire a contractor or whatever it would be. And somebody would tell me, I would hire the person that gave me the full blueprint on how to realize my dream. Yeah. Even if it required hiring other people, that person would tell me and show me or hire them or whatever. And I would just pay that person.
Yep. There's just so much to be said for like businesses are just like I'm a business person, I'm running a company and my fear is what am I missing? And every business owner has that FOMO feel. Like, what are they missing out on? What don't they know now that they'll know in 6 months that's going to change their business or it's going to make more profits? Think in your own context. How many things do you know today that you wish you could tell yourself 3 years ago to make more profit? And so you need to be part of those conversations. And I think part of that, and then we're going to end this kind of webinar on a more practical note here. I think people ask questions because I'm kind of eating into the Q&A time that I usually reserve, is how do we change an MSP? And I think the first step is your QBRs. We keep hearing about this. It's the catchphrase. Every technology outlet and MSPs is talking about QBRs. But what's happening is people are doing them wrong. They're sticking to their comfort zone of operational efficiency and thinking that's what a QBR is. You're touching base and making sure that your tickets are being closed on time and that you're working on the right tickets. Instead, a QBR is the B is extremely important. Stop calling it a QBR. Call it an SBR, strategic business review. Call it something else. And then say, we're going to focus on business so that when you talk to your client or you're talking to a prospect, you say, what's different about you as an MSP? Like we talk business strategy once a quarter with one of your key stakeholders to make sure that you're not missing out on technology that will help you with profits.
I love that. And go one step further, maybe aside from just doing the QBR wrong or SBR, whatever you want to call it, put the right back to aces in their places, put the right person in charge of it. Mm-hmm. It'll change the dynamic of the conversation. I'm a believer that the QBR should be ran by account managers.
I am a huge fan of that.
I think they're the first. I think they should be they're the ones that connect the dots. They're the ones that can say, once they finish the review, they can say, you know what, Adam, here's what we need. Here's the areas to focus on, and then bring in the right people from their organization to do whatever that is. So in other words, back to operational efficiency, if that's one of the pieces you discussed, it's only a piece of it, and they can bring the right parties in to address it and fix it, and sell for it too, by the way. Sell to them what it is you're going to give them. If there's an efficiency piece and operations are going to come into that, and you're going to do this, whatever that is, you're selling it. And then anything else that takes place, you know.
How many MSPs have a strategic business plan, Sean? That's a great question for you to answer.
Oh, so from from the start, okay, pre-COVID, it was probably, you're looking at about 15 to 20%, realistically speaking, that we're doing it. Like as far as having a strategic business plan for their clients, maybe 20%. During COVID and post-COVID, it has increased because of companies like you guys that exist now that have become much more prolific. We had a study within one of our MSP groups, and we were sitting around 35 to 40% that were actually using some sort of, I'm not saying they were using it right or completely or effectively, but there were about 40%. Now there were about 80% that said they've heard of it and have done it before.
Are you talking about the MSP having a strategic business plan for themselves or their clients?
I'm talking about for their clients. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would hope that they had it for their client, they have it for themselves as well. But then again, though,
you'd be surprised how many people I run across on a daily basis. Like, what's your plan for growth over the next 2 years? Like, how, what's your market? Who is your customer base?
Oh yeah.
What do you want to grow by 10% this year? Do you have a prospecting? Like, how are you going to do it? So what I found is the boutique MSPs, what I call the boutique MSPs, where they are focused on doctors' offices or schools, or they've got a vertical they're working on. They are extremely adept at creating strategic business plans for themselves and for their clients. Like, hey, here's where we're going to take it, because they're working within a context. So when you're just working with schools, or 90% of your clientele are schools, it's easy to work in context. Like, hey, you have a school, all these schools want to help their teachers be more efficient at teaching and less disruption. It's really easy. You can walk into any QBR/SBR and you can say, here is what we're going to talk about, how to support the teachers. Now, you take it one more step and you say, hey, what kind of school is this? Are they parochial? Are they public? Are they,
Sure.
And is there a mission they're trying to accomplish here? Are they a charter school that's trying to do science? And so, but it all works really well, but they're very strategic focused. Now, the MSP that tries to be everything to everyone, you're the one putting out fires all the time, and you don't have time to come up with a strategic business review. And then you go to talk to your clients about a strategic business review. And so you naturally fall into the habit of doing ticket analysis, because that's what you're doing every day. You're putting out fires and you're doing operations. So you assume that's what your client wants to hear about.
Right. Well, that's, if you look and see though, you saw the emergence of like EOS be a lot bigger than it was before. So EOS is the reason, take away MSPs even, just the SMB market. You have a lot of people that came from corporate America that use these tactics that had trickled down into SMBs, because they realized how many, I couldn't tell you how many business owners I've dealt with that have been everywhere and nowhere at the same time, right? They just, whatever feels natural, or what they had a gut feeling, and that doesn't really solve the problem. So EOS became prolific also because they were like, hey, we don't have any way of really helping enable our stakeholders to be effective and all march in the same direction, row the boat the same way. So EOS and QBRs are not that dissimilar, are they now?
We align our QBR strategy with Traction EOS because it's so stinking efficient and good.
It's spot on. It's a project management element for each department to achieve the goals you set. And by the way, QBRs are set goals. I don't know if anybody knows that. Back on the goals of the company. The goals of the company, everybody, when you start EOS, what's the first thing you do? You look at your crawl, walk, run concept, right? Like, where are we trying to get to? We want to do $1 million more this year. How are we going to get there? Then you start breaking down on your strategy from month to month, quarter to quarter, whatever it is, based off how you run your business, right? You break it down and you go as granular as you can into specific allotted responsibilities of people. And that's where your rocks come into play, right? And you start talking about week to week what you're going to accomplish for each initiative or each event. Again, not dissimilar from a QBR. Because in a QBR, aren't you talking about a project?
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't familiar with EOS, I hope everybody here is familiar with EOS. If you're not, no shame. I'm not going to shame anybody. But
I
There's
am
a reason why
same.
people talk about EOS and talk about traction and the different methodologies out there, because it works. It's what's missing in your business. That focus, though, the eyes to look into on who's going to take care of a problem and that business solution that you're trying to go after. What is your MSP trying to do this year and get everybody running in the same direction so you're pulling profits? And you're trying to do this with your clients as well, but you're doing it in a technology context. And you can tell your prospects, and you say, look, you can go with anybody else, and they're going to make sure your PCs run. Or a dime a dozen. Operational excellence is a dime a dozen. But if you want to grow your company, work with us, because we're going to look at your business strategy and we're going to find technology that's going to bring you profits. And that is going to differentiate you and land you more of the high-end contracts that you really want to work with. And you want to, and it's almost a litmus test, because that client, that potential client's going to go, you know what? I do see that in my marketplace, the people using technology are accelerating past me, and I want to be the person who accelerates. I want to disrupt my marketplace. And I use that example of a dog kennel. They use technology. They want to live stream little Fluffy to the person at their workplace or while they're on vacation. You have some incredible ways of live streaming that they've never even heard of. And you can say, hey, if somebody takes a little Fluffy to Kennels R Us, they get this enhanced experience. And that all of a sudden makes the client more money, and they want to throw you more money so you can do cooler things with them. And that reciprocal relationship happens. And then all of a sudden you're on their board as a trusted advisor. That is the conversation you need to be part of. That's what we talk about, top-down approach. Understand the business so you can provide them solutions in context. Not that bottom-up is wrong, but you're already good at bottom-up. Every single MSP I've ever met is great at bottom-up approach. You know how to design solutions, but are you designing the right solutions?
Agreed. Well, and let's go one step further even. If you don't go top-down, I learned a long time ago, for every signature you need to add to your contract, 30 more days to wait. So if you don't start top-down, you're going bottom-up. You have to get sign-off, not a physical signature necessarily, but if I talk to you, Adam, and you're the low guy on a totem pole, and you're helping just find us, you're going to introduce me to your supervisor.
Yep.
Okay, that's a sign-off. Even there's no contract, there's no physical sign-off, I got to get him to buy in or her to buy in, and then that person might say, I'm not the one. Get you to the next one. Now it's another. So look, we went 30 days with you, 30 days the next person, 30 days, that's 90 days. You may have missed your window of opportunity now also. Somebody else scoops in, they start top-down. They've already had the executive conversation. They've already shown value add. They've already shown that they understand the dialogue that's taking place and the needs. They're closing the deal. You're not getting anything from it at that point. You've lost your opportunity.
So ask the right questions. You can have QBRs. You'll be doing your checklist, but if you're not asking the right questions, you're losing business. If you ask the right questions, you will evolve. You will see profits go up. If you want a testimonial, I can give you 1,000 testimonials of MSPs that I work with all the time that say, once you change the business context, this works. It's not anything you have to do fancy. You don't have to hire more personnel. You don't have to hire a VCIO. You just need to have a different conversation and be curious about your client and watch your dynamic change.
Absolutely. And David had said something very good. I see that. David, you're right. I've been part of that. I've been a culprit, a victim. I've been the main person of it all, right? The fact of the matter is you do have to be, you have to focus on the practice of it, right? It is habitual to do this, but you have to make sure that you clearly outline what you're trying to accomplish. And you have to make sure that you're answering, just force yourself to go through the outline, at the very least, the outline, the weekly outline, you're answering those questions. But there has to be somebody that's the mediator for this at the end to cut everybody off and say, we're now in the weeds. Let's get out of the weeds. Somebody at the end of the day has to be that person. There are companies out there that you can hire that mediate EOS, that implement and mediate. In my case, with several of the companies I had worked with, I always brought one person in that he would end up becoming one of the executives amongst the company with me, and he would moderate and mediate the EOS for us, because that was his baby. He was an operations guy.
Yep.
But we all had to agree in advance that guy, he was the one. He was the referee. He was the one that said, enough, we have to move on. That's too much. That's too little. You didn't provide enough context or criteria or or whatever, and so on and so forth, because you're absolutely right. You have to get on with, you start going back to the old adage of you're busy working in the business as opposed to on the business when you do that.
Yeah. And that's the whole Night Watchman warning.
Mm-hmm.
When I post this to YouTube, I'll try to put the link in the bottom to that actual short story. But yeah, you got to work on your business, and you got to help your clients work on their business too, because they're running through the same pitfalls you are. They're so caught up in their operations, selling candy, signing up dogs, whatever they're doing in their workplace. Sometimes they need that 15 minutes where they actually think about their year. And your QBR may be that one time a quarter where they actually get to work on their business. Some of the small businesses, that's just the way it is. And you walk in there, you become invaluable at that point.
Oh my Lord. And you should be invaluable. And you should be invaluable. Let's be honest. Yeah. We just had the biggest digital transformation that occurred in the history of our world over COVID. And MSPs, if you guys didn't rock this and become like the king and queen of the area, I don't know what you did wrong.
Oh my gosh. People had record years.
You should have it. I mean, again, we went from 100, like a 10% to 15% remote workforce to 100% remote workforce to now we're at a hybrid state where it's, depending on what report you read, could be anywhere between 60 and 80%, right? Or even 30 and 60 even, depending on who you read. The reality is though, that chunk of business, them to stay involved in being productive and keeping their company afloat relied solely on the MSPs. Now imagine what that conversation should have been like. How about great value add? Hey, Adam, what are you trying to accomplish during COVID? I just want to stay in business, dude. How do I stay there? Well, let's talk about what you got going on. Let's see what you do. What do you do? How do you do it?
Is there a piece of technology that can help you? Again, in your QBRs, if you're, I think I said it in one of it was either our podcast or on one of our sessions, it was, if you use the word firewall in a QBR, you should be fired. If you need to be talking about EOS, you need to be talking about business strategy. And if you do that, you're going to increase your profits. You're going to find things because you know technology, and your client is going to teach you about their business. And that is a win-win every single time. I thank you, Sean, for coming on today. You and I could talk for hours, of course, as always. We're currently have a podcast series going on with Sean and I talking about this kind of stuff and Pitch It and ConnectWise and how all this stuff sticks together. So check out the Humanize IT podcast if you want to know more. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. This will be sent out to everyone here in the next day or so about the YouTube channel. We have other webinars up there, how to talk like a CEO, how to talk like a CFO, and how to do different strategies. Our goal is to empower you guys to do your jobs better, to increase profits, to make the world a better place through technology. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to any of us at Humanize It. You can reach out to Sean. I'm sure his email's floating around somewhere.
Everywhere. No,
Everywhere.
And let me give you your plug too. I think anybody who watches this should definitely show up to support you in our pitcher competition as well, because I don't know how much everybody knows about this, that you have your involvement, but you've been a very good contender so far. And I think everybody should know that you're actually trying to win a competition with ConnectWise. It's a pretty big deal. It's pretty fun.
With any luck, I'll be standing on that stage in November.
With me. Yeah. That's right. So yeah, so your MSPs, your audience should really try to get involved and help you with your support of this. And also one thing I know that you do, that I do, is we always want feedback on how we can improve. So if you're seeing something we can do business-wise as a business, I mean, you'd want to know that because you need to make sure you can have the best pitch when it comes time.
Yep. So, all right. Thank you, Sean. And we'll see everyone later at the next webinar. Bye.
Thanks, Adam.